Hello there, and thank you for joining me for a special edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cook, and in this episode, we are marking the transition out of November and into December, and remembering that November is Men's Mental Health Month. So, we have a couple of special guests this week who are going to bring you some information about what's currently being offered for mental health here in Nova Scotia, but as well about some plans and some dreams for a new mental health facility right in Richmond County. And we're going to introduce an element to Telile 24/7 that we've never actually had before on the show, one that's near and dear to my heart: music. That's because we're going to hear from Louisdale-based singer-songwriter Tyler Shea. And in addition to sharing his dreams for the Richmond Mental Wellness Center, he's also going to share a couple of songs, including an original song, that have helped him through his own mental health journey. But we begin by speaking to Nova Scotia's first ever Minister for Mental Health and Addictions, Brian Comer. Not long ago, we had Minister Comer on the show talking about a new pilot project for mental health delivery that's taking place at the Cape Breton Regional Hospital in Sydney and at St. Martha's Regional Hospital in Antigonish. We're going to get an update on that, and we're also going to hear about a new mental health day hospital that has set up shop at the Cape Breton Regional Hospital in Sydney after being instituted in Halifax earlier on. Here's Minister Brian Comer to explain how that new mental health day hospital works and to share his thoughts on Men's Mental Health Month. Minister Comer, thank you for joining me again on Telile 24/7 today.
Hey, Adam, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you back, and one of the reasons we did want to have you back is because your government and your department recently made an announcement about a new mental health day facility that is in operation at the Cape Breton Regional Hospital in Sydney. I know that is a facility familiar to many of our viewers here on Telile, not just in Richmond County, but also in the CBRM. Can you tell us a little bit about this facility, how it works, and why it was needed at this time?
Yeah, for sure. It would be the second mental health acute day hospital in Nova Scotia. The first one was open in Halifax last April. Certainly we've seen some really good results thus far in terms of patient satisfaction and the impacts that it has had on the inpatient bed capacity for the addictions and mental health program provincially. Specifically, the day hospital offers intensive treatment for those living with addictions and mental health issues through an interdisciplinary team. You're talking, psychiatry and nursing and social work and pharmacology, kind of a collaborative setting, while also allows the individuals to return home in the evening to their families or support networks. And has been shown to be as effective as actual inpatient 24/7 sort of care, about 20% of the time. I think it's a good thing to have in Cape Breton for sure.
Now, what can you tell me about how a facility like this works, just for our viewers who may not be familiar with the concept of a day hospital for mental health, just in terms of the general check-in process, what happens when you're there, how and when you would be discharged if you arrive with an issue there? What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so the day hospital would be for intensive treatment. Your referral point would be from a primary care provider, usually a psychiatrist in a situation. In terms of capacity, typically they'll start around 10 patients starting off, and then the goal is to scale up to about 15 to 20 over the next year. In terms of length of stay, I guess, or length of utilization of the service ranges typically between 10 and 22 days. It kind of depends on the individual, right, circumstance and those sorts of things. I think with in Sydney and as well as in Halifax, the day hospital locations will also be in close proximity to the inpatient units, right? So if there's any kind of change in condition, you can either step down back to inpatient, or you can actually get a referral to a less intensive service, out in the community, right? So kind of offers that relief, I guess, relief valve, right, for the inpatient and bed capacity as well.
So we're talking a bit about relieving the patient load, and obviously we've had this discussion before. You've seen through your years as a paramedic, even before coming into provincial politics, that mental health care is an issue in Cape Breton, and a lot of the times the issue is making sure that quick and sorry, well, I'm just going to do a second take on that. Three, two. So you and I have talked about this before, Minister Comer, that you've seen through your years as a paramedic, even before entering provincial politics, that it's not only an issue of getting treatment for mental health, but as well for getting quick access to treatment for mental health. Sometimes it could be a matter of minutes or hours in terms of being able to address the issues that need to be addressed in any individual. So, how do you feel that the arrival of this day hospital concept for the Cape Breton Regional is going to help out in terms of being able to deal with those issues here in Cape Breton?
Yeah, well, I think based on, what I've been hearing from people that have used the service, I toured the day hospital in Halifax, spoke with patients and clinicians at that facility. I think it's a very high levels of patient satisfaction. I think it inadvertently takes, strain off the hospital system. But as we know, right, mental health specifically can be quite complex, right, depending on the individual and their history and their trauma and their substance use. All these things sort of factor in. So I think when you sort of look at universal access, you kind of look at what we call the continuum of care, right? So sometimes that's a phone call with a peer supporter, sometimes it's a coffee with a friend, and sometimes it's
Mm.
acute inpatient hospitalization, unfortunately, right? So all of these interventions I think play a role in certainly offering improved care for people.
Now, I think you know that I'm going to ask this question before I even ask it, but of course, when we talk about services that are available in the urban parts of Nova Scotia, we do start to look at when they might be able to come to the rural parts as well too. It's been many years since the straight Richmond Hospital in Evanston has even had a detox facility. So I just wonder, is your department and is the provincial government in general looking at these day hospital sites at Sydney and in Halifax with a possible eye to expanding these services to smaller hospitals in rural communities such as Evanston, Inverness, or Antigonish? What would you say there?
Yeah, I would say I think over half of our population of the province lives in rural Nova Scotia, right? So it's certainly a challenging issue. Most of the constituents that I represent are in a rural riding. I think there's an opportunity to do some innovative things, right, for virtual care. When you look at the pilot that we did in Eastern Zone and at St. Martha's and Antigonish, which is being expanded with virtual access for people in rural settings to urgent psychiatric care. Typically, historically, they would have had to be transported to a central tertiary care center, away from their families, away from their support networks. And oftentimes, these individuals have other issues, housing and transportation, and so these things all kind of add up to the stress level when they're already kind of in a tough place. So I think that's one example of an innovative, I think, approach for rural parts of the province.
Minister Comer, I'm glad you brought up the rural access to mental health care pilot project that's been going on at St. Martha's Regional Hospital this year and at the Cape Breton Regional before that as well too. Can you give us a general update on how those projects seem to be going? I know you talked previously about expanding that concept to hospitals in the South Shore, but essentially, how do things seem to be working out at St. Martha's and at the Cape Breton Regional?
Yeah, I've been hearing very positive things in Eastern Zone here. As I spoke with Chris Bork, would be the clinician that kind of runs that service. So I spoke with Chris last week during the announcement actually. So he's very pleased with that. The families I think in the area are very pleased with that. We've had pediatric psychiatry here for quite some time virtually. Now we have another clinician here on the ground as well in Cape Breton, which is a good thing. But the virtual care is interesting. For some people really like it, and some people really don't, right? So I think it's another opportunity to help the people that will utilize the service. But I think certainly different health regions certainly have unique demographics, right, and unique challenges across the province. So every area I would say is unique, but the vast majority of people that I've been speaking to here have been quite positive.
Minister Comer, we're having this conversation midway through November. November is Men's Mental Health Month, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that, partly as the Minister for Mental Health and Addictions, but just in terms of the myths that have followed around the care and treatment of mental health in men over the years and stereotypes that go with men having an open and honest conversation about mental health. Just can you give some of your thoughts on that and the importance of marking Men's Mental Health Month every November?
You kind of hit the nail on the head, right? You're kind of referring to the stigma, right, aspect, especially for men, right? If you look at suicide rates, for example, substance use, all of these issues, right? Predominantly, significant male component to it for sure. I grew up in a lobster fishing family in the east coast of Cape
Mm,
Breton, right? So
yeah.
I think you look at the farmers and the fishers and all these people in the province, right? It's not typically top of mind, but I do think it's much more improved. I would hope to say than in previous years. That being said, I think there's certainly a long way to go. But I would encourage anyone that is having a rough time, especially when in a crisis situation, to phone the provincial crisis line or phone 911, or even just checking in your families or friends or a senior that lives alone. Right? There's these things we all kind of play a part, I think, in that.
You mentioned the suicide rate, and recent studies have shown that men between the ages of 40 to 60 are among those most susceptible and most vulnerable to suicide in Canada. Does that type of statistic hit home for you as you oversee your department and oversee the services that are put out, not just for men, but obviously for everybody across Nova Scotia?
Yeah, I think suicide is pretty devastating, right, for families and loved ones. Spent most of my professional career working in addictions and mental health before this. So I mean, yeah, I wish it would be zero, right? The number, every year, but we certainly have to work hard to strive towards that. We did conduct an online survey last winter. Approximately 7,000 people responded. So these sorts of questions looked at, perceived barriers, what we can do better, what we can do differently. So we're sort of taking a look at that sort of data right now with public health to try to really enhance, the prevention framework. But there's always certainly work to do in that regard for sure.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground, Minister Comer, in just a short time, as I thought we would. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add about all of this, or even looking ahead to the next few months in terms of what your department will be doing?
Yeah, no, thanks for the questions. We continue to work very hard, right? I think Nova Scotians in the next year will certainly see, I think, improvement in the shift in the landscape for access to addictions and mental health care. And I'm certainly looking forward to kind of continuing, on that path for sure.
Well, we appreciate you taking some time for us to talk about all this, either during Men's Mental Health Month or really anytime. Thank you, Minister Brian Comer, for coming back to Telile 24/7 today.
Thanks, Adam. Take care.
Brian Comer is the Minister for Mental Health and Addictions for the province of Nova Scotia. He's also the MLA for Cape Breton East. We've been speaking to him today via Zoom. Stay tuned for more of Telile 24/7 in just a moment. As I mentioned off the top of the show, we're going to have an element of music in this week's edition of Telile 24/7. You're going to hear some songs that have helped our next guest get through different parts of his own mental health journey and have inspired him as he seeks to set up a mental wellness center in Richmond County. His name is Tyler Shea. Earlier this year, he set up a GoFundMe crowdsourcing account to try to raise funds for the Richmond Mental Wellness Center. Now, that fundraising effort has generated $855 so far. That's a long way away from the goal of $50,000 that Tyler Shea has set up, but we're going to hear about what motivates and drives Tyler Shea to see more mental health service delivery happening right here in the Strait area. But before we hear from his hopes and dreams for the Mental Wellness Center, let's hear some music. Here's an original song recorded in the Telile studios by our next guest, Tyler Shea.
It kind of has to do with the idea of letting things go and how easily, people say that to each other. We just got to let it go. We just got to let it go. And a lot of the times, I find myself wanting to let things go before I properly, allow and accept and grieve. And when you go through that process, then letting go gets a little bit easier. So. Here we go. Rip out our hearts and sew them closed, built up walls around a wild rose. Bones that ache from ghostly pain, weighted down by mostly shame. We all do our best to cope. We lean too hard on hope. Lose our minds to feed our souls, sacrifice for material goals, buckle down so we all get paid, waste away till we got it made. We all do our best to cope. We lean too hard on hope. We've all let our heads inside that rope. Well, it's time to let it go. Time to let go of our fears. No more prayers falling on deaf ears. Speak your truth with intentional prose. Release all your dysfunctional woes. We all do our best to cope. We lean too hard on hope. We've all let our heads inside that rope. Well, it's time to let it go. It's time to let it go. Heal our hearts and sew them closed. Tear down those walls around your wild rose. Bones that ache from ghostly pain, weighted down by mostly shame. We all do our best to cope. We lean too hard on hope. We've all let our heads inside that rope. Well, it's time to let it go. It's time to let it go. It's time to let it go.
So once again, you're hearing the music of Tyler Shea from Louisdale. And in addition to being a talented singer-songwriter, Tyler, of course, is a mental health advocate and a behavioral analyst here in Richmond County. He has been involved in early childhood intervention for many years. And we have him here today not only to share parts of his own mental health journey, but also to talk a little bit about a mental health services project that he's had on the go for a little while. We want to hear more about that in this segment. So Tyler, we turn back to you and we want to ask you about the Mental Wellness Center that you'd like to see established in Richmond County. Where did this all come from and why do you feel there's a need for a center like this right here?
I just would like to see there be a little bit more community when it comes to mental health. I want it to become more out in the open and normalized and generalized. I'd like to see it move away from the extremes where people are really suffering with a diagnosis and become more inclusive, where everybody knows how important it is to kind of care for ourselves, our mind and our body in these ways that, promote good mental wellness and mental health. I have this theory that, the mental health crisis is not necessarily being fueled by all of the outliers on the spectrum who are, already have a diagnosis of, or I think that the general population of people, kind of has a responsibility to work towards being more inclusive. And I'll relate that thought to how I was more dysregulated with my children.
Sure.
So, metaphorically speaking, if my children are the outliers in that, on the mental health, then the crisis is sort of focused on them. They're the ones that need the help. So my children are the ones that need the help. They need the intervention. But I learned that that's not the case. It was me that needed to change. Right? It was me that I was in a better position to do something about my mental health so that I could better support my children who needed more support. So I think viewing the mental health crisis that, the world is facing, it seems that the people who are really reaching for support are not getting it. And again, they're just ideas, hopefully curiosity and not, I think that the more and more the average person who doesn't necessarily identify with a diagnosis with anxiety or depression, the more and more that the average kind of person recognizes that, okay, I don't have a diagnosis, but I still haven't been taking care of my mental health. And if my children or anybody around me is really struggling with mental health, my capacity to be supportive for them depends on my mental health. Mm-hmm. And in those situations, people always, I think right now, a lot of situations are being created where, ruptures are happening between friends and family members and people in general because we can't support each other. Because for that reason, if I can't be supportive of somebody who's experiencing something, maybe I don't understand, maybe I can't, why? It's like I need some more self-exploration to understand, like, why am I now getting dysregulated? Why is my nervous system getting triggered? Because I'm not able to be supportive. Maybe it's somebody that's, saying, and then now there's this conflict, and then, like, you can't support me, you're not a good friend, and then friends walk away from each other. Oh, I've had enough of this. Or family members walk away from each other. I can't, I've had enough of this. I don't understand why this is happening. I don't understand. And I think that the more and more that we generalize the importance of consciously regulating our nervous systems and understanding why we have to do that.
Mm-hmm. And I know that healing these ruptures that you speak of, these ruptures between parent and child, between friends, between different members of a family, are critical to what you want to do with the Mental Wellness Center. Can you give me 2 or 3 other examples of some of the programs that you'd like to see roll out if you're able to bring this to fruition? What are some other examples?
Yeah, so my real focus is on what's referred to as inner child healing. And that's kind of the big thing where, if you remember that quote that I said at the beginning, like how we, try and be open-minded.
Yes, to be open to new ideas and to not simply guard against new ideas by hanging on to old ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I have collected a lot of evidence from myself that the root of my anxiety, my depression, all this stuff comes back to my inner child not having certain emotional needs met. And that is a challenging thing to talk about, because as soon as I say that, I know, especially if my parents are watching this, like, it's a hard thing to hear and reflect on. And so it's a very kind of delicate thing to talk about. But regardless of what our story is, okay, we talked about nervous system regulation, the window of tolerance. Did we? I don't know if we talked about the window of tolerance.
I don't believe we
on
have.
air.
No.
Okay, so I'm going to try and connect like the physiology of our brain and the nervous system, and bring in kind of this spiritual idea, which is really what the inner child is, right? It's a little bit of a spiritual way of explaining, the physiology of our body. It's a way of connecting our, our spirit, our body, our mind, our body, however you want to say it, and it takes an open mind to hear out. So again, with our nervous system, everybody has this window of tolerance, right? Adults, children, and everybody's window of tolerance is different.
Yes.
Some people, if you can imagine, it to have a size, okay? Somebody's window of tolerance, I don't know where the camera is. Somebody's window of tolerance might be this big. Somebody's window of tolerance might be this big.
Sure.
And what that means is that when we're inside of that window of tolerance, we perceive the world, the reality, we make sense of everything through our senses, right? Our sight, our taste, our touch, our hearing, all these, we take in information, it gets sent to our brain, and we make sense of it. When we're regulated, we're in our window of tolerance, and none of the information we're taking in is overwhelming. And as long as we're not overwhelmed, we stay inside that window of tolerance. And inside there, we're primed to connect with each other, we're primed to learn, we're good to go. Anytime that our senses take in information that overwhelms us or triggers an emotional response, our nervous system kind of says, hey, what's going on here? And then our fight, flight, or freeze or fawn kind of kicks in, and we go from our higher brain states to our lower brain, which is a more survival state, and now we're outside of our window of tolerance. So we're a little less logical, we're a little less rational, we're just trying to survive whatever it is that we're trying to survive. A lot of the times, we're trying to survive perceived threats that aren't necessarily a real threat in this moment. And not to say that that's not valid, it's connected to, lots of things, our past experiences, evolution, all kinds of things can affect how we respond to different triggers. So as children, imagine if that's happening, and whether you're an adult or a child, we move in and out of that window of tolerance all the time. And if you know nothing about that, what's happening, right? It's kind of strange, because then you're thinking like, oh my God, like what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I feel good. Why do I feel anxious right now? Why do I feel right? The second you can say, when you're able to label something, right, is like, let's say you're feeling anxiety, and instead of thinking, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I feel anxious right now.
Yeah.
You can say, oh, I understand, like right now, in this moment, I'm outside of my window of tolerance. And that makes sense to me. That makes sense that I'm feeling anxious right now because there's something about this situation that is triggering my nervous system and I'm outside of my window of tolerance.
Yeah.
Right? The second that you say that to yourself, you understand what's happening a little bit more. And the more you practice that, you might immediately feel a little bit less anxious just in that moment, just for recognizing. So what's happening there, I think, sort of spiritually, is that dysregulation. If you can imagine that everyone has an inner child inside, right? And it's really our subconscious mind, right? Our inner child is really our subconscious mind. Like, we don't forget anything in our life. Our body remembers everything. We may not have memories of childhood or our earliest experiences, but inside our subconscious, everything, we remember it. So when I say that we have this, inner child inside of us, I don't mean like, it's like our subconscious mind, right? That, has had to adapt to whatever adversity we faced, whether it was a real threat at the time or whether it was perceived.
I think it's helpful for our viewers to know too that while this is a physical structure that you're hoping to build, what you're offering goes far beyond the physical. You're offering things like podcasting, and you're offering things like, your own music, either playing one-on-one or playing for, special house parties that are geared towards mental health and mental health issues. How do you feel that integrating these out of the box, out of the physical plant services is going to help people out?
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff that I'm planning to do is really geared toward the fundraising aspect of it. But it's also, I hope, and to be honest, I haven't been super consistent at putting that stuff out there.
Sure.
Again, I'm a lot of this time I don't have it all figured out yet, and I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants and trying to overcome some limiting beliefs still. But I really want to find a way to put this information out there that's easily accessible for people. Because a lot of this stuff that I believe, I really do believe that everyone has the potential to kind of be their own self-healer. And there's a funny dynamic with this field of, mental health professionals and stuff, because really the whole field, like, it exists right now, but the end game should be for it not to exist. You know what I mean? Which is a strange thing, and I don't know how many people actually talk about that. It's, if you have, mental health professionals or anybody like charging for these types of services, I mean, the end goal is to
not require
to not
this
require
type of service.
To not require it. So how do we do that? And it's a strange place to be, because in knowing that and wanting to achieve that, I'm setting up, a sort of business to sustain myself, knowing that the ultimate goal is for the business, like, to not necessarily be a business anymore. It's just like, how do we, guide people to be their own healers, to be their own support, to be their own, and that sort of makes it sound like, oh, everybody should do everything by themselves. That's not it at all. I think that when people start becoming their own self-healer and giving and meeting their own needs, we will, almost immediately become a more cooperative society. Because, you know, when we meet those needs for ourselves, when we learn the skills to meet those needs for ourselves, you know, we fill up from the inside. And then we're not going around, you know, and experiencing this, you know, empath burnout that a lot of people talk about, you know. It's like we're going out, we're trying to be good people, we're trying to be kind, but because we're not filling ourselves up from the inside, everybody's feeling burnt out, and everybody's struggling, and everybody's, you know, has something inside again that's.
You almost seem to be going with a bit of a food bank analogy here, because first of all, those that need a food bank are trying to get to a better place in life, but you need to eat first, you need to have nourishment first. And the example I'll use from the Port Hawkesbury Food Bank, when it's set up in 1991, it's now expanding. The two organizers of the Port Hawkesbury Food Bank were interviewed at the time, and they were asked, when would you consider your food bank to be a success? And they said, when it closes, when we don't need a food bank anymore. So you're going along much the same line in terms of this mental wellness center. It'll reach its peak of success when it's no longer needed and when people are better able to access what they need.
Right. Or when it's, you know, when, you know, the government makes mental health services free across the board for people. You know, when it's just something, when there is zero, you know, obstacles to accessibility. Yeah, I think in my mind, it's not, no part of me thinks that it's an unrealistic place to get to. You know, I really do believe that every person, you know, has the ability to get themselves to, you know, a better place. And that's kind of weird saying. It's, you know, I think that a lot of people really want to feel better, right? We always want to feel better. I want to feel better. But it's not that we have to feel better. We have to get better at feeling, right? And so then I go back to the relationships with our emotions, you know, and it's fostering a relationship with ourselves is like kind of exploring, okay, what's my relationship with all my emotions and how can I foster it? It's going to be uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable thing to do. And, you know, I've developed different things that kind of help bridge the gap. Like, I mean, you can't run a mile, you know, before you can run, or you can't run a marathon before you can run a mile.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So this stuff that I'm talking about, like, I may be making it sound easy, but I need to put it out there that I've been off work for 3 years. I've been working at this for 3 years obsessively, you know, and I understand, like, I'm trying to find a way to make it easier for people if they choose to want to go to do it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, sure, and also part of it is like, man, you know, maybe somebody needs to go off work and be off work for 3 years. Maybe that's what life is about. Maybe that's how you find yourself. And who am I to interfere with anything? Yeah. You know, everybody's on their own path, but you know, then that sort of leaves. I mean, if that's the way it's supposed to be, if everybody's supposed to, you know, find their own way and do something, like, it's going to take a really long time to solve this mental health crisis.
very much so. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment or two, but right now I'd like to set you up for another song.
Okay.
Yeah, and we will wind things down after this one, but I'm just curious as to what you have for us this time around.
Well, I was going to do another original, but maybe I will do one of these Okie Dokie Brothers songs.
Okay, now tell our audience about the Okie Dokie Brothers, because this was really interesting to me in terms of what you'd said about your own mental health journey and who the Okie Dokie Brothers are and how they helped you.
So the Okie Dokie Brothers are like, a children's music duo, very sophisticated music that they write, and I mean, this is not, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and stuff like that. I mean, their music has such deep, powerful messages in it. And when I was at my lowest, when I felt most disconnected, when I didn't even have music at this point. Like, I was so detached from music, which at one point was the only thing, keeping me sane. And here I am, focusing on this idea of the inner child and healing the inner child. And bam, like, I find these guys that, I just felt so connected to their music. And I don't know, to me, like, it's just music that was speaking right to my inner child. That was just like, if I was regressing, to an age where I was just like, I'll tell this story, and this is, so another part of my stuff is work with psychedelic plant medicine and stuff like this. So one of my, kind of self-exploration journeys with plant medicine kind of left me in this space for, a few hours where all I did was dance around my house to the Okie Dokie Brothers. And, part of becoming an adult, like, I think most people, we really do lose ourselves and lose our connection with our younger self that was so carefree and so not reserved. And, being in that mindset where I just felt so childlike, that was really healing for me in letting my, not being self-conscious about the way I was dancing or anything like that. I had zero anxiety in that moment. And again, so I just think that's connected to the inner child healing stuff and just,
Well, let's share some of that great music. Everybody from Raffi to Jim Henson knows how to take what seems to be a children's song but have a wonderful adult message hidden in it, so it's something for everybody. So we're pleased to hear that from you. Ladies and gentlemen, here's another song from our friend Tyler Shea.
When I first heard this, I was starting to spend a lot more time out in nature, which I think everybody can benefit from. We spend so much time on our screens and in chairs doing our work, and everybody, I think, could benefit from a little bit more time in the woods. And this is called Through the Woods. I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me. I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. We'll leave the streets in these neighborhoods, head over the river, through the woods. You're wondering if I'd go wandering with you. What kind of trouble we'll get ourselves into? Would it be wrong to tag along with a band of vagabonds? You wonder if I'd wander with you. I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. We'll leave the streets in these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way. If you ever get lost or the trail leads you astray, the music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come. And we'll leave the streets in these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
So that was Tyler Shea taking us through the woods with that wonderful song from the Okie Dokie Brothers. And Tyler's been through quite a journey through his life. He's now looking to put that experience to help others in terms of mental health here in Richmond County by setting up a mental wellness center for the county. And Tyler, I wanted to ask you about one aspect of the Mental Wellness Center project that I found on your GoFundMe page for this project. You note that one of the things you would like to do is work to bring a full-time physician to Richmond County as part of this wellness center. So is that something that you would be interested in working on with the Department of Health and Wellness or with the local recruiting navigators for Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health? What was the thinking there?
My thinking there is that really what I really want to have this space established and up and running. And I would like to, entice a physician, with that by saying like, here's a space, here's just, it's like walk in ready, set up a practice. But I do have a kind of condition that I want to meet with that. I want to find a physician that will come to the area that believes in the future of psychedelic medicine as it relates to the mental health. Because I want to create a ketamine clinic. I want to be able to legally provide psilocybin assisted therapy for people who want to explore that. And I'll be trained to to be the guide in those situations, but I won't be a physician, So I really hope that, the ultimate dream of this, if I can see it to fruition, will be to find somebody that, really believes in the things that I believe in, and that might just want to say, come to Cape Breton and set up shop and kind of help me deliver a service that's really unique to, our area and, Atlantic Canada, everywhere. I mean, like there's places like this, but not enough of them,
So in that spirit, do you anticipate that you'll be having conversations with officials with the Department of Health and Wellness, or for that matter, the Department of Mental Health and Addictions? Is that something that's in the cards for you?
I'm honestly, I'm open to anything. I can't say that I've thought about that. And again, like I I still work through my own limiting beliefs, my own insecurities, but yeah, first and foremost, I need to try and stay focused on like the fundraising aspects of this and raise the money to create the space, and then open it up to other health professionals, healers who might want to come in and use the space and do things like yoga and breath work, just different things that are focused on the nervous system and teaching people ways to regulate the nervous system, and that's a really good place to start, I think. But yeah, I mean, when I'm ready, I hope to be able to reach out to the people I need to reach out to and make more things happen.
All right. Well, we wish you the best. As we're winding things down here today, Tyler Shea, I do want to ask you, what keeps you motivated and what keeps you going through this type of a project? Because it's not a small project, it's a large project. It involves thousands of dollars and it involves a lot of groundwork on your part. So what do you think is the biggest motivator for you to see this mental wellness center come to pass here in Richmond County?
Well, oh man.
Sometimes there's no one answer, eh?
Yeah, I again, I've had this strange relationship with motivation. And I mean, I've been motivated to do this for so long. And I go through these periods where I feel really motivated and then I feel less motivated. And part of that is because I recognize times when my motivation to really move forward might be stemming from a place where I'm not recognizing an area in myself that needs healing. And there I am, like, seeking the external validation by pushing forward and feeling like I need to help other people, I need to help other people, I need to help other people. And then I come back to, I can't help other people unless I can help myself first. And so a lot of the times I kind of get stuck there, and not to say that I mind being stuck there, because I know, like, that's the most important thing. Like, I can't, that's true for me. I can't help other people if I can't help myself. So, I've relaxed more into, a kind of a steady place where I'm continuously self-reflecting and helping myself, and I'm letting everything else, I'm letting the project kind of play out at a more natural pace with less urgency, with less, not that it doesn't deserve the urgency, but I find that every time that I give into that urgency, I avoid, like, doing the work on myself, and then it's this, like, weird cycle that I'm witnessing. So it's hard to give a real answer. Like, I'm just motivated. Like, my only motivation to do anything is really to be my own healer, to figure out how, how I can foster the relationship with my emotions and regulate my nervous system, and then figure out shortcuts for other people to take if they want to take it. That being said, like, I also don't think that there's really any shortcuts to this kind of stuff. No. But so it's really about teaching myself to hold space for myself, which is so if I'm holding space for myself, like, the deeper I go in myself, the better I will be at holding space for other people. And that's kind of like, my services. I've launched this name, like the space holder therapy. That's really the root of it. Like I've been so focused on holding space for myself to allow myself to feel this discomfort in order to grow. At the root of any healing journey, I think that's where you have to be. You have to choose a safe level of discomfort that you seize as an opportunity to grow. And I really do think that I've found a method to help people choose safe discomfort that they can experience, and then give them the tools to learn how to regulate their nervous system so that they can rebuild the relationship they have with themselves. They can trust themselves and love themselves. And I don't know.
No, you described it very well, and that's an important lesson to learn as well. We know, Tyler, that your discussing of these issues means that you open yourself up to the world and to our audience, and we know that's not easy, but we're very grateful for you for doing this, not just here, but also last year on our Mental Health Experiences panel. So thank you so much, Tyler. We're going to get one more song out of you, but before we get that, thank you so much just for joining me and sharing your dreams and sharing your struggles as well here on Telile today.
Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate your presence.
No, it's no trouble at all. We're glad to have you here, and we're glad to get one more song out of you. So what do you have to close up with?
Well, I'm going to give you another Okie Dokie Brothers song. It's called Hope Machine. It's referring to the heart.
That's a good way to look at it, for sure. Right? Ladies and gentlemen, for one last song, Tyler Shea.
Every day I jump out of bed, splash water all over my head, brushing up my teeth and make sure my ears are clean. These days, gotta be strong, so do a push-up, sing a song, pick on the guitar and stamp on the tambourine. Always good to change my socks, know the tools in my toolbox, learn people good, then learn myself the best. Don't get lonesome, stay glad, take a bath, wear some plaid, work when I can work, but don't forget to rest. Dream good all night long, rise up and sing your song. They say life is hard and they're not wrong. Gonna keep that hope machine running strong. Adiole, adiole, adiole. Plan what you can plan, dance when you can laugh at yourself and make up your own jokes. A little bit of fun, a little bit of growth, hopefully a little bit of both. Love your ma, love your pa, and love all kinds of folks. And talk quiet and listen loud, teach humble and learn proud, scuffle with the struggle and wrestle with the pain. Open homes, open blinds, open hearts, open minds. Let in the sunshine, let in the rain. And dream good all night long. Rise up and sing your song. They say life is hard and they're not wrong. So keep that hope machine running strong. Adiole. Adiole, adiole.
And there you have it, folks. That wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you for tuning in, and thanks once again to my interview guests this week, Tyler Shea and the Minister responsible for mental health and addictions here in Nova Scotia, Brian Comer. And a special thank you to my colleagues at Telile Community Television, Becky, Bourinot, Nick Boudreau, and Callen Cowan, for filming and formatting the material from Tyler Shea, both the interview segments and the music that you saw on this week's edition of Telile 24/7. If you have any thoughts about what you've seen or heard over the past hour, or suggestions for future editions of Telile 24/7, feel free to contact me directly or to contact Telile Community Television in Arishat, and be sure to follow Telile on social media. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you very much for tuning in for this week's special edition of Telile 24/7. I'll see you next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.